This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Iraq and Gaza. In this half hour, we're going to focus on both, where events are moving fast. Israeli tanks have crossed into the Gaza Strip, some fearing that it's the start of a major operation against Hamas after its takeover from Fateh.
Ehud Olmert is also preparing to meet George Bush in Washington, which has already given the go-ahead for a major new offensive north of Baghdad. 10,000 soldiers and attack helicopters are involved in Operation Arrowhead Ripper. The US Army says it's on the hunt for Al-Qaeda and Sunni fighters. In Baghdad, a massive bomb blast has killed at least 60 people and injured more than 100 near the mosque for Shia Muslims. Sebastian Walker reports.
Violence returns to Iraq's capital after days of uneasy calm. The bomb exploded in the very center of Baghdad. Police say it came from a truck loaded with half a ton of explosives. Again, it was a busy commercial area that was targeted. Again, a mosque was damaged in the blast. Baghdad's only just starting to get back to normal after a 4-day curfew following an attack on one of the country's holiest sites. And this bombing came as around 10,000 US soldiers were embarking on a major military operation north of the capital. The US military released these pictures, saying it's targeting Al-Qaeda fighters who've moved out of the city during the recent security crackdown.
But we're going to go after them. They will not have a safe haven here in this country. But we just don't want to push them from one location to another, to go after their networks, their cells, their leaders, to eliminate their opportunity to wage this horrific violence against the people.
But as well as new violence in the capital, there's also been intense fighting in Iraq's south. Clashes there between security forces and Shiite militiamen have left dozens dead over the past 2 days. The huge death toll from the bombing in Baghdad is sure to inflame tensions which many had hoped had calmed over the curfew period. And the US mission to pacify Iraq looks set for some more difficult times ahead. Sebastian Walker, Al Jazeera.
Iraq's Foreign Minister Hoshea Zebari is in Washington holding talks with senior American officials, among them the US Defense Secretary Robert Gates. Al Jazeera's Rida Fakhri spoke to the Foreign Minister about the security situation in Iraq, the future of the US military there, and the role of groups like Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda rely on very lethal attack on Iraqis to ignite civil war, to ignite sectarian violence.
Well, when the US government funds and arms Sunni groups to take on Al-Qaeda, does it not threaten to perpetuate the state of insecurity and civil war by arming one group against the other?
The arming of the Sunni tribes or people in certain parts of the country is done with the sole objective to fight Al-Qaeda.
Well, one tenet of Al-Qaeda is to evict US forces, first from Saudi Arabia and now from Iraq. So does the long-term US military presence in Iraq not risk acting as a catalyst for groups like Al-Qaeda and other groups within the so-called resistance?
Well, it could be the case, but at the same time, we are considering and contemplating some long-term arrangements as an Iraqi government initiative, because the current level of forces, the current strategy really may not be sustainable for the long term. So we are thinking beyond that, to seek some arrangements along security partnership arrangement.
What do you mean exactly by security partnership?
Security partnership means definitely a relationship between the Iraqi government and the United States for protection, for long term, and there would be a presence of the US troops there.
But did you have a say? Were you consulted by Robert Gates before he made the announcement that the U.S. intends to keep U.S. military bases along the model of South Korea, which could go on for many decades?
He didn't say about bases, actually. This is another thing. There would be presence, so whatever you term that is up to you.
Military presence means some sort of military base.
Some presence, definitely. Definitely these people will stay in barracks and bases and so on, but not to organize that in a sense that there would be permanent bases. Still, we haven't reached that.
But again, it leads me to ask you, do you think it would be in Iraq's best national interest to have U.S. military bases for the long term?
I really wouldn't answer you this question.
No, why not? I mean, it's a valid question.
No, we are talking about security partnership. You're coming to bases. When we come to bases, we will announce them, you see, but we haven't discussed basic rights.
But the Americans have already announced them.
I mean, the Americans are free to say whatever they want.
Well, how concerned are you that come September the U.S. will draw down its troops?
This is a possibility. I'm just thinking loudly. It's a real possibility that it could happen. You know, next year there's election season here, and Iraq is a hot issue. There is a lot of concerns, but I believe that we, as the Iraqi government, should move faster on these issues, not because of the American, because of the sake of our own people and the suffering they are going.
That was Rida Fakhri talking to Iraq's Foreign Minister Hoshea Zebari.
An NGO called Iraq Without Violence published a new report showing that the acts of terrorism in Iraq have declined to a record level since the implementation of enforcing the rule of law security plan in Baghdad.
The network based its report on different statements that were released by experts in the field.
It seems that the Iraqi forces have managed to enforce the control on the ground by implementing the Enforcing the Rule of Law security plan. According to a report released by the Iraq Without Violence Network, an organization in charge of monitoring and finding ways to decrease the violence in Iraq, this year's number of acts of terror is less than 2006. According to a report released by the network in 2006, there were 1,228 acts of violence, 47,748 people were martyred, 57,122 were injured, and 211,268 families were forcefully displaced. According to a report released by the same organization in 2007, there was a notable decrease in the number of martyrs and forcefully displaced people.
كان كالآتي عدد الشهداء 9,302
In 2007, 9,352 have been martyred, 5,463 men, 2,294 women, and 1,665 children. 1,589 have been injured, and 11,700 families have been forcefully displaced. This shows that the violence has decreased a great deal in Iraq since the implementation of the Enforcing the Law security plan. More than 70% decrease in acts of violence, a proof that the Enforcing the Rule of Law security plan has achieved many of its goals. From the holy city of Karbala, Ali Hussein Hamza, Al-Iraqiya.
قد حققت الكثير من أهدافها. من كربلاء المقدسة علي حسين حمزة، العراقية.
The horrific death toll in Iraq is paralleled with a terrifying number of Iraqi refugees who had fled the sectarian fighting. On the eve of World Refugee Day, the UN announced that the number of refugees in the world has increased for the first time in 6 years due to the constant increase of Iraqi refugees, locally displaced or those who had fled the country. Our reporter Abdul Latif Omar provides us with the following report.
The road to the unknown starts here. As soon as you step onto this bus, you begin a one-way journey. It seems that Iraq no longer has enough space to fit all of its people.
The security situation in the country is tragic. Frankly, the Sunnis do not trust the Shiites, and the Shiites do not trust the Sunnis.
Despite Iraq's large size, it seems that it does not have enough space for its people's dreams.
I fled from the difficult living conditions, the war, and the lack of power and water. This is why people are leaving.
As the bus begins its journey, no one appears to be afraid of the unknown. In most cases, the destination is either Damascus or Amman. People are most likely to face difficult living conditions.
We do not have a source of income. We've been slowly spending our savings, and we're running out of money.
You may break down at any moment, and you may not find anyone to support you.
My family has been divided. My brother escaped to one area, and my sister fled to another. Being away from one's family and living in exile is difficult.
On the World Refugee Day, the United Nations released a report reflecting an increase in the number of refugees in 2006. There are more than 4.5 million Iraqi refugees, out of which 1.5 million are living in Syria and Jordan alone. 3 million other refugees are displaced within Iraq. These horrific numbers may rise because the situation has not improved in Iraq, and also because there is no hope in the horizon.
At this hour, Prime Minister Olmert and U.S. President George Bush are sitting down for a planned 3-hour meeting. Topping the agenda, the new reality in the territories following the Hamas takeover in Gaza. IBA's Eli Wagalanter has that story.
Today's summit between Prime Minister Olmert and U.S. President George W. Bush was originally scheduled 3 weeks ago. But the Middle East map has changed drastically since then, adding further urgency to their meeting. On the table now is the need to draw up a new blueprint for a joint strategy aimed at strengthening PA Chairman Mahmoud Abbas and his new emergency cabinet, following the Hamas takeover of the Gaza Strip. Olmert said that he plans to release some $562 million in customs and tax revenues that were collected on behalf of the Palestinians and which had been withheld while Hamas shared power in the government. Olmert's pledge followed that of the European Union, which announced it will be lifting its embargo on economic aid to the Palestinian Authority. U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice announced last night that the U.S. is lifting its suspension of aid to the PA as well.
We intend to lift our financial restrictions on the Palestinian government, which has accepted previous agreements with Israel and rejects the path of violence. This will enable the American people and American financial institutions to resume normal economic and commercial ties with the Palestinian government.
Today's summit will also focus on the other issues of major concern to Israel and the United States. These include the threats presented by Iran's nuclear program, the implementation of UN Resolution 1701, which calls for a weapons embargo on Hezbollah, and the prospects of peace with Syria. This could lead to a rethinking of America's policy of placing Damascus at the center of its axis of evil. Eli Wagalanter, IBA News.
The new Palestinian Prime Minister Salam Fayyad presided over the first session of the emergency government in Ramallah. This news comes 2 days after the emergency cabinet was sworn in following the Hamas takeover of the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, Palestinian Prime Minister of Justice and Information Riyad al-Maliki said that the new government is committed to providing necessary help to all residents in the Palestinian territories, including those inside the Gaza Strip.
الفلسطيني بما في ذلك قطاع غزة.
Amidst the burden of internal division and mounting political pressure, the new emergency government held its first official session in Ramallah. The new cabinet members laid down the groundwork for their ministers and discussed the recent developments in the Gaza Strip. Among the issues discussed are security, the international blockade imposed on the Palestinian territories, and the unity between the West Bank and the Gaza Strip.
The Palestinian territories are one, an undivided nation. We cannot deal with the issue of the West Bank separately from the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian sovereignty applies to the entire Palestinian territories, including the Gaza Strip. We are doing our best to resolve the problems in Gaza. We are trying to end the crisis through political means. In doing so, I hope we will not be forced to take harsh measures.
The new emergency cabinet, which held its first session, put security at the top of its agenda. Meanwhile, Palestinian Interior Minister Abdel-Razzaq Yahya is working to draft a security plan capable of dealing with the developments in the Gaza Strip and enforcing the law in the West Bank. Yahya wants to include the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, the military wing for Fateh, as part of the security forces, a move that intends to help maintain security and restore order in the Palestinian streets. As part of the new security plan, Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade will be deployed in the streets of the West Bank in order to prevent a Hamas takeover, similar to what had happened in the Gaza Strip. However, some political analysts believe that the security plan is destined to fail due to the presence of the Israeli occupation.
The equation of influence and power in the Palestinian Authority is based on two factors, security and money. The security institution collapsed and ended in a dramatic way in the Gaza Strip. The second factor, which has to do with the money, is the only weapon left for the new emergency government to use in order to revive the Palestinian economy.
While inauguration ceremonies were held in Ramallah to honor the new members of the emergency cabinet, Hamas's ministers in Gaza said that they do not recognize such a government. Meanwhile, a political cloud continues to persist over the Palestinian territories, where many express doubt that the new government will be able to help heal the nation and enhance national unity. The Gaza Strip has been marginalized from the central authority in Ramallah, and the new Fayyad's government, which inherited financial and security problems, needs a miracle to bridge the gap in the Palestinian territories, where some continue to take the law into their own hands. For Madar program, Majid Saeed, Abu Dhabi Channel, Ramallah.
لبرنامج المدار ماجد سعيد قناة أبو ظبي رام الله.
An Egyptian diplomatic source said that the Middle East Quartet meeting, which was scheduled to take place in Cairo next week, will be postponed due to the recent developments in Gaza. According to the source, the meeting is expected to be held in mid-July. President Abbas and Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert were expected to attend the Quartet meeting. On the second day of the meeting, they were planning to hold a conference call with a group that was formed by the Arab League, tasked with activating the Arab Peace Initiative. Among the Palestinians who are stranded at the Beit Hanun border crossing, one Palestinian was killed and 4 others were injured during a gun battle between the Israeli army and Hamas. After the latest events in the Gaza Strip, hundreds of Palestinians have been stranded at the Erez crossing while attempting to leave the West Bank. An Israeli official said that Israel is determined to impose a total economic blockade on Gaza, aimed at preventing the Hamas government from receiving any financing, including tax revenues. The Israeli official said that in addition to preventing Palestinian tax revenues from reaching Gaza, Israel is considering measures to prevent financial transfers from reaching individuals via money transfer networks and other financial institutions.
Mohammed is one of hundreds of people who have been struck by fear. She says that Hamas members are pursuing her husband. She and her children stayed inside the Erez checkpoint in Beit Hanun for 4 days, only to be met with humiliation and dangerous Israeli gunfire. I escaped from Gaza to here because my husband is a member of the National Security Forces.
How are you and your children eating and drinking?
We only have God. The children sleep and wake up and cry, then sleep again and then cry. That's it. Whenever they wake up, I keep telling them, it's almost over.
Everyone here has a story to tell. Everyone expresses fear in their own way. They have nowhere to go. These people dream of having a secure crossing point into the West Bank, where they say there is no threat of danger. This is happening amidst pleas to get them out of Gaza.
We've always been behind them. Didn't they leave? They should take us with them. They brought us from our homes. We were happy in Jordan, although we were living among foreigners. Today, we want to go along with them. They left us. We were steadfast with them for 13 years in Gaza. Today, why have they all abandoned us?
For these people, returning to Gaza is not an option. The decision by Israel to allow them to enter the West Bank is also still not an option. They cannot do anything except wait for a breakthrough. The keys are in the hands of the occupation. This is the Executive Forces checkpoint on the border of the Beit Hanun crossing in the north, where we were earlier. People who want to leave Gaza to go through the Erez crossing point are prevented from doing so at this checkpoint. Here too we found Mohammed, who has decided to return to Gaza after 4 days of humiliation, where her desperate attempts to flee the Strip failed.
Everyone at the Erez crossing should surrender themselves and they will be safe. No ma'am, you are safe. You are safe. May God make it easy for you. You will be secure. You will be safe. May God make it easy for you. Peace. Bye.
Hanan al-Masri, Al-Arabiya, Beit Hanun crossing.
Israeli tanks have withdrawn after making an incursion near the Beit Hanun crossing in the northern Gaza Strip, where they surrounded nearly 150 Palestinians who tried to flee after the Islamic movement Hamas took control of the Strip. Eyewitnesses said that 3 Israeli tanks carried out an incursion of more than 1 kilometer into the northern Gaza Strip. They confirmed that the tanks opened intense fire.
أفادت مراسلة الجزيرة في لبنان عن قرب التوصل إلى اتفاق لإنهاء.
Our correspondent in Lebanon confirmed that a ceasefire agreement is within reach to end the crisis between the Lebanese army and Fateh al-Islam in Nahr al-Bard. According to the agreement, Fateh al-Islam must give up its arms and hand over 60 of its wounded fighters to a Palestinian joint force. In addition, it must expel all Arab and foreign fighters from the camp. Meanwhile, the Lebanese army confirmed that 3 of its soldiers were killed in sporadic fighting in the camp. We are now joined from the outskirts of Nahr al-Bard by our correspondent, Salam Kuder. Salam, what are the latest developments in Nahr al-Bard at the political and military levels?
ميدانيا القصف لا يزال متقطع بين الحين والآخر تسقط عدة قذائف.
On the ground, the Lebanese army continues to carry out a sporadic bombing campaign against Fateh al-Islam positions in the eastern and the northeastern Nahr al-Barid. At the political level, a delegation from the Palestine Scholars Institution said that it drafted a ceasefire agreement which was approved by Fateh al-Islam. We're still waiting for an official response from the Lebanese army. If the army agrees to the ceasefire, then the draft agreement will become a binding document. The Lebanese position is very critical because it determines the success or failure of this draft agreement. A delegation from the Palestine Scholars Institution will meet tomorrow with Lebanese army commanders and present the agreement to them. The following report will shed light on the ceasefire agreement drafted by the Palestine Scholars Institution and the Lebanese government's position.
ما أبلغنا بها من رابطة علماء فلسطين وموقف الرابطة إضافة إلى موقف
A delegation from the Palestine Scholars Institution started the mediation process in Nahr al-Barid in an attempt to resolve the conflict between the Lebanese army and Fateh al-Islam group. The delegation, which described the draft agreement as practical, said that articles of the ceasefire may be implemented in the next 48 hours. According to a source affiliated with the Palestine Scholars Institution, Fateh al-Islam has agreed to a unilateral ceasefire with the Lebanese army. In addition, it agreed to hand over 60 of its wounded fighters and accepted to expel all Arab and foreign fighters from the camp.
God willing, I expect that a solution to the Nahr al-Barid crisis is about to be reached. Based on the information provided to us and the articles of the draft agreement, I think that a ceasefire is within reach unless some disturbing news develops. In general, the articles of the ceasefire agreement are practical and inclusive, and they protect the rights of all parties.
The Lebanese military and political authority confirmed that any ceasefire agreement must include the surrender of those Fateh al-Islam fighters who took part in the direct attacks on the Lebanese army positions.
Nearly 75 Lebanese soldiers were killed and hundreds of others were wounded in a spree of killings and assassinations that targeted the army. In addition, hundreds of Palestinian civilians were killed in the conflict. If we let these perpetrators go free, they will relocate elsewhere in Lebanon and continue to spread corruption, terror, and hate among the Lebanese.
Amidst the ongoing political efforts in Nahr al-Barid, 3 Lebanese soldiers were killed in a new wave of confrontations between Fateh al-Islam fighters and the Lebanese army, which said that mines and bombs pose the most threats to its units. This draft agreement needs a Lebanese ratification, which in turn will transform it into a bona fide accord. Salam Khudr, Al Jazeera, from the outskirts of Nahr al-Barid, northern Lebanon.
Video footage from inside the Nahr al-Barid refugee camp shows some well-known features and sites. In this report by our colleague Clara Shaha.
White and black smoke drift around Nahr al-Barid camp, as well as charred, bullet-riddled, or completely destroyed buildings, stirring the curiosity of people who want to get an image of what lies inside. To satisfy this curiosity, we're providing you with these images from inside the heart of the refugee camp. Of course, we were not able to enter the camp to shoot our video due to the strict security measures. However, this did not prevent us from connecting by phone with some of the residents inside the camp. Our network of contacts allowed us to obtain these images taken by one of the fleeing residents of the camp using a cellular phone video recorder. So please forgive us for the unsteady images. This is the Sahel neighborhood, which lies in the southwestern area near the beach. It is near the Aid Center and the 6 UNRWA schools. It is one of Fateh al-Islam's most important strongholds. Families and Fateh al-Islam members live here on the periphery. However, there is little presence of Fateh al-Islam members. The temporary unofficial ceasefire allowed some residents of the camp to secure some of their necessities, including water. It also provided an opportunity for the small camera to tour some alleyways. This vegetable market begins on the outskirts of the isolated security square, where Palestinians are now gathering at the request of the Palestinian Factions Committee. We draw a little closer to the Damoun neighborhood. This is an oil factory, where the borders of the old camp are the closest to the new camp. We see in the distance the UNRWA schools on the main street of the Safuri neighborhood. One of the 6 school buildings collapsed yesterday. After a ground tour, the clashes resume, compelling everyone to return to their homes and shelters.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.